right, guys, I am super, super excited about this interview. This is with someone that I have a lot of people that are favorites that, in my network, but this young lady is definitely on the top of the list. I mean, she's probably one of my most favorite people in the entire planet, and the planet's big. Let's just say it, that just tells you how important she is. Donna Karlin, welcome to the Ripple Effect podcast. How are you doing?
I am so excited to be here. Do you know that it's 15 years ago that we first met?
I know, it's crazy. So we met, actually, I went back and I actually looked into my email because I wanted to see the first time we interacted. And it was over when we were both doing blogs for the Executive Books blog back in 2006, way back when. And you reached out to me on my first post, which I was super nervous about. And I remember doing it, for those of you that aren't familiar with that site, it used to do kind of book summaries of some of the leading books on leadership and networking, et cetera. And I was asked, and when I looked at the list of people that were going to be contributing to this site, I was like, oh, I am so out of my depth. And so when I pushed publish on my first theoretically review of a book, I was super, super nervous. And then I got this email like 30 minutes later from you. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great. It was exactly what I needed when it happened. Talk about, you were rippling before you even knew me. It was amazing.
That's it. And you caused no end of grief in my world because being a Canadian,
yep.
Our prime minister at the time was Stephen Harper.
Yep.
And you actually looked a lot alike in those days. And I remember sending a picture to my son who was working in government at the time. And I said, and I was side by side with our prime minister. And Michael wrote back saying, why are you sending me two pictures of the prime minister? And I said, because it's not. One is Stephen Harper and one is Steve Harper from the States. And he said, tell him to get a haircut and change his name. It was the funniest thing. And it's been that kind of week because the first book that we discussed was If Harry Potter Ran General Electric. And Tom Morris, who was the author, was actually a part of that conversation. And I was on a call with him this week. And it was just really something to see the wisdom of, I think it was also a Stephen who owned the Executive Book Summaries, to literally handpick 15 people from around the world who would have divergent views and viewpoints to contribute to, if they couldn't read the book, at least the topic of the book. In how you shared, which is one of the reasons, not only your name, that I reached out to you afterwards, because I loved your viewpoint and your absolute honesty. And that's one thing that I noticed through the Ripple and everything else that you do. It's just a kindness, honesty, direct approach, literally nicely challenging everyone to recognize the ripple effect that they have in every conversation, every look, every glance, that you have of somebody as you walk by them in the street, masks or no masks now. I mean, your eyes are the only thing that people really see if you are masked wherever you're going.
Yep.
And even through your eyes, you could show kindness or derision. And what you're doing is inviting people to look for the best in people and support the best in people.
Yeah, thank you.
I love that. Yeah, well, I just love that.
Gosh, I'm not sure what to say. I really, really appreciate that. That means the world to me. You are one of the first persons that really stepped up to the plate to say, you've got something here with the Ripple. I've got to be honest with you. When we first met, I was really struggling because I really thought that when I first came out with that first edition of my book, it was really for a really small niche group of introverted people like myself. And I remember you always saying, oh, you are not shy and introverted, but I was, and I still am to a large extent. But I remember thinking, this book might be picked up by, a few folks that might need a little bit of help. And you're like, no, you're not seeing the big picture, which you are phenomenal at. We're going to get into your work here in a minute, but you are really good about saying, hey, look, I'm synthesizing this down. You are not looking big enough, and you have a potential for a much bigger audience if you choose to go down that path, but you have to choose it. And I remember after that email exchange, we had this great call, and I was just so amazed because here I was kind of working from home at the time, and I was doing some consulting and doing a little coaching. But really, at the end of the day, I didn't really have an identity yet. I wasn't like the Ripple guy or the Ripple man. And I was still struggling to figure out where to get my legs under me. And you said, why don't we set up a call and get to know each other better? And we did. And then you just like dove right in. I mean, you challenged everything. You were asking me questions that I never was prepared to answer. But they were great questions, and they were thought-provoking, but most importantly, they were conversation starters between us, which was so amazing because you really pulled things out of me that I thought and felt deep down inside, but I probably hadn't put words to. I mean, you have a skill. I mean, you are one of the best ripplers I have ever seen in my entire life. You are just amazing in that regard, and I've learned so much from you over the years, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for that. It's a delight for me, like a joy for me to listen to somebody and their viewpoint of themselves that absolutely is not what I see.
Yep.
So there's this tension there, right? It's like, for crying out loud, why aren't you seeing what I'm seeing?
Yep.
And that's human nature, though. One of the things that I am working on right now, to tell you the truth, is how do we live in the questions? You know, we live in a world where we ask a question to a gazillion devices that we have all over, our homes and our offices.
Mm-hmm.
Heaven knows that we've got a lot of them in our place. We just ask Google or Alexa or whoever, and somebody answers. And it used to be my son for me. I used to call him my Moogle because he's what we have, like a big brain, Yeah. And now he says, I've been replaced by a device. Well, he doesn't live here anymore either, so that makes
He's not quite as convenient as Alexa now.
Exactly. So, but the thing is, I maintain that we should not get all the answers, and we should not expect that we ask a question, we'll get a definitive answer. Okay, that's it, we move on.
Mm-hmm.
No, we need to figure out what is the question we need to ask ourselves right now. And apropos to what you were just talking about and your viewpoint of yourself in the ripple effect and your impact is, what is your inner dialogue?
Yep.
What are you telling yourself? Whose story are you owning of yourself? Yours that you want to write, or somebody else's story of you, of what you're expected to do, or who you are suspected to be, or other interpretations of what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. I really believe that we need to figure out what is the question we need to ask ourselves right now. If you're working with a coach, wonderful, but you're not working with a coach 24/7. What do you need to feel that you're coached 24/7?
Yeah.
And then we just course correct and tweak along the way. It's, I think the ripple effect, what's great about that, Steve, is that you invite people to look beyond themselves. What you're doing is saying it's not only about you, it's about what you're doing right now is a pivotal moment, not only for you, but for somebody else.
Yep.
And to get out of your own head and your own ego and to say, this might be very gratifying to me. However, what am I doing to everybody around me or the world around me? And what you're doing is, if I may share a really quick story.
Sure.
When I was doing my course in design thinking, because I'm a behavioralist, I need to see the full picture, especially if I'm going to accelerate people, ideas, and all that fun stuff. One of the stories they shared was the Apollo 8 mission to the moon. And their mission was to circle the moon, not to land on it.
Yep.
And they were supposed to, document what their findings were, their observations and everything else. One of the astronauts said, I'm going to turn the camera back on the Earth. And he said that was probably the best lesson we have ever learned, to turn the camera back on ourselves. Yeah. He said the planet is the most magnificent thing to look at, the planet Earth. But the atmosphere is so thin, so fragile. And how could we think that we keep stuffing it with stuff and not have an impact?
That's true.
And what is my accountability to protecting that? And what if we took that kind of philosophy into our lives and said, I'm turning the camera back on myself, no longer pointing a finger, it's this one's fault or that one's fault, or, that person is making me feel horrible, whatever it is, and to turn the camera back and say, what can I do to change the status quo, to not accept that which is not acceptable? Because bottom line is, would you ever allow another person to talk to you the way your inner critic does?
No. No.
Right? So turn the camera back. I mean, we're great at selfies, but that's the superficial thing. What if we just turn the camera back to document our actions and our thoughts and everything else? How would that affect the ripple?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's I mean, that's a beautiful question, and it's something, and I think that a lot of people really struggle with, right? They don't ask those questions of themselves because they don't think about it. I think so many people are so focused on what they have to do out there in the world, what kind of appearance they have to have, or what kind of influence that they're supposed to be giving, that they often fail to stop and ask those questions about whether they're really living with their purpose. Are they being authentic? Are they in alignment with who they are? And are they even happy? And, I think for a lot of folks, when you turn that camera back on yourself and you start asking, like you said, that question, what is the inner dialogue that I'm having? What, if I'm having a bad day, or I'm struggling with my company, or as a leader, I'm not getting the results that I want, rather than look outward and focus on what everybody else is not doing, looking backward and into yourself to have that dialogue to say, well, what am I projecting? How am I contributing to why we're not making that, objective, or we're not hitting that milestone? And I think, that, your question about what can I do to change the status quo, I think is a beautiful one, because it really does challenge us to rise up to our own reality.
That's it.
Yeah.
Remember years ago, when Fast Company magazine was a physical magazine out of Boston, I used to read that thing from cover to cover. I loved, how they had things around the edges, and I would just literally demolish that magazine more than once, and I saved them because I found the wisdom in there was unbelievable. And one day I got a phone call from the executive editor of Fast Company magazine. I remember holding the phone, staring at it like it was a foreign object. Why is he calling me? And he said, somebody told me to speak to you because I'm doing a piece on beware of what you ask for, because you just might get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was working with a senior executive in a company that had condos all over the world. He had private jets. He was worth more than millions, achieved all his goals. He was young. And the conversation was, well, now what? I wanted everything that I currently have. So now what? I don't trust that my friends are my friends for me.
Yeah.
They're my friends because I have everything that I have, and, it'll rub off on them, kind of thing. And I said, the question isn't what you're going to get. The question is, what are you going to give? Mm-hmm. And that's what's next. It's, my question to him was, well, what did you think success was? What did you think success was going to look like? And the answer was having all these material things. But material things, although it makes life a lot more cushy kind of thing, does not give you that sense of fulfillment. So what are you going to give? What can you give to others where they could learn from you and you positively impact the next wave of successful people and really teach them what success is? It's also, what do we define success as? Yep. And that's going to really change any ripple that we do, because are we doing it to get money? Are we doing it to get fame? Are we doing it to really positively impact people in a fundamental way that goes well beyond that moment in time? Absolutely. So it continues to ripple, right? I think is critical.
Well, one thing that I always tell folks is you have to create the ripple for yourself before you can create it for other people, right? And that's exactly what you're talking about. It's when you look at things, even for someone like that has everything, assumingly, they're still searching for the thing. And you may have set that as a goal that and have lots of money in the bank account and have people covet, conversations with me or want to be in my network, and all those things think are great, but it's really your ego telling you that that's what you really should be driving for. And that's the ultimate bar to achieve. And when you get there and you realize you got over that bar, it's like, well, it's pretty lonely, and it's, sort of disappointing that it wasn't what it was all cracked up to be. And fortunately, that editor had the wherewithal to ask the question, so what's next? And reaching out to you to say, I thought I had it figured out, but I don't. And that's a real positive thing. I know a lot of successful people, as I know you do, that get there and they don't actually ask that question. They just think, well, I guess this is it. And they could do so much more with their lives, so much more out there in the world, and could contribute on a such larger basis. Yet their ego takes hold and says people are after them for their money, or they should hold on to every dime that they have and not contribute in any kind of way, or take that skill set that they did to build or master a company or a team and not share that freely for no offer of expectation or return. And they just failed to do that. They sit in that lofty perch, and ultimately then they wonder why they're really lonely and their life is not quite as fulfilling as it could be.
That's it. It's to live an impressive lifestyle or have an impressive life are two different things.
Yep, that's true.
I also think that we are living in a very cynical society. If you think about it, I look at LinkedIn, for example. I have a huge following on LinkedIn. If I reach out to somebody who I'm not directly connected to, it's usually because I'm curious. Mm-hmm. I've read something about them and I want to know more. And I want to ask them a question where the answer will certainly help me in my work with other people. And most of the time they think I want to sell them something. That is the first thing. And so I need to start my letter off saying, I'm not selling you anything. I don't want you as clients. That's not why I'm reaching out. I'm, perfectly fine with my client base as I have it. The thing is, I am curious about why you started this company or why you're doing this work, and what was your end goal for this? Are you achieving it? This is going to help me with some of the TED fellows I work with, or some of the other fellowship programs I work with, to help them see impact is more than just what the project is.
Yep.
It's how you actually implement it, why you're implementing it, and is it broad enough? Are you looking broadly enough and encouraging those that are benefiting from what you're doing to literally feedback why it's beneficial to them or what's missing for them, so you continue to course correct, expand, scale it up, whatever it is. That's what's important to me. It's not so easy to get past that cynicism when you reach out to somebody blindly who has achieved something, because they're inundated with people trying to sell them something.
Yep. Yeah, it's really tough, and especially with LinkedIn. And what has evolved over the last few days is people treat it like Facebook for business, and it's not Facebook for business. I tell a lot of folks that you really want to focus on the right kinds of connections, build those right kinds of connections, and the curiosity piece I think is really interesting, because there are folks that intrigue you in the approach that you take. There's an authenticity there that they don't often hear. Most people will be like, I'd like to link in with you because, I think we might be able to do business together, or I want a job, or I want, like you said, I want to sell you something, and everybody has this very skewed perspective. And, the authenticity of the approach that you have, no doubt, is why people are intrigued enough to look beyond the message and say, okay, I'm going to explore this because I'm curious too. Right. And that's the beautiful thing about what you do is, you are what what you represent out there in the world. You get what you get, and you don't make any apologies for it. I remember actually when we first met, it was you talked me into participating at the CAM conference, Conversation Among Masters, and it was I believe 2009. I may have the date, the year wrong. 2008, 2009 timeframe. So we'd been friends for a couple of years and talking off and on, and you poking and prodding me to keep moving forward and keep doing the work that I was doing. And I remember this conference came up, and the ironic part was it was going to be back in my own old hometown of Albuquerque, New Mexico. So you were asking all sorts of questions about, that area and what to do and the different environments. And then you said, well, this is crazy. Why are you not participating? And I said, when I looked at the list of speakers that they had in the event, that in and of itself, these looked like, the word is in there. It's masters. And I at that point, did not even consider myself even close to being a master. And you were just like, that is absolute garbage, nonsense. You really chastised me during that conversation. And I said, well, I'll think about it. And you're like, nope. I'm making the introduction, and I'm going to, and next thing I know, I'm on the call, like within a couple of hours with one of the founders of the group. And I know you were helping in that stage planning, but you did that with no expectation of return. There was no, hey, now you've got to do me a solid, or you've got to do something for me. You had no agenda, and it was amazing, and it was so refreshing. But I was scared to death, and so I show up in Albuquerque. I go to this event, and I'm setting up, and I'm just very, very intimidated because people are like, "Are you a certified coach? Are you, this or that?" And I'm like, I'm just here. My friend Donna told me to be here, and they were going to showcase my book in their little symposium area or their little conference area. And I was going to get up and have an opportunity to speak a little bit. But next thing I know, I feel a hand on my shoulder, and you spun me around and give me this great big hug. And everything that I had, all the trepidation, all of the worry, all the, hey, I don't belong, just evaporated. And it was just amazing. And you just took my hand through that event. You helped me go to the right sessions. You introduced me to all these great people, and you kept building up my confidence level in a way that, really up to that point, not a lot of people had done. And so it was unbelievably positive. And you were creating it in such a way with authenticity that, people paid attention to you because you're that kind of person. It's just amazing the kind of ripple that you have created out there in the world. People listen to what you have to say because not only because you're great at what you do, but because they know the motivation when you speak. When Donna speaks, there's a reason. And that, I think, carries so much weight.
So I'm going to jog your memory.
Okay.
Ready for this?
Yeah.
We met before CAM once when I was doing the keynote speech for the Mind Your Own Business conference in Austin. And you came to the hotel.
Vista, or no, Bastrop. Yeah, Bastrop. Okay, so I had the dates wrong. I was thinking Bastrop was after. So, okay.
No, that was before. That was our first meeting. And then met you and your amazing father in Albuquerque.
Yeah. Who, by the way, says he sends his love. He can't wait to see this when it when it gets posted. So he's excited.
Yeah, and I think it gave both of us a little bit more of a comfort zone. Yeah. Me introducing you to the CAM people, to saying that he is a master and we need to give him a voice here. And having met you and interacted with you, and we shared a meal and really got to know each other at the Mind Your Own Business conference, like afterwards, after my talk. It was really important to me that you find your voice in that milieu.
Yeah.
These are people who are master coaches, master practitioners, and I wanted them to get to know you in the ripple, because some of them, I'm going to be very honest, are really in it for the business end of it.
Yeah.
Most of them are not. They're in it for the, let's impact people and help grow them area. And I wanted you to be a presence there. Because, add a little bit more, dash of authenticity in there will never hurt, and it'll always help. And it was good for you, especially with your book coming out, and which has a prominent place on my bookshelf, and thank goodness was not destroyed in our tornado hit. So
I know. Oh, thank
that's
goodness.
one of the things that we have, that's still here on my right on my bookshelf. So I, at this stage of my career, I ask myself, how can I help people become more of who they are?
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. How can I help people remove the limitations they set for themselves? The only roadblocks that are in people's ways, for the most part, are those that they erect for themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get a lot of pushback there, because you have a lot of people in business saying, I don't have financing, I don't have this, I don't have that. And they're so focused on what they don't have, they're not paying attention to what they do.
Yeah.
And they're not paying attention to the people in their lives that can collectively support them. It doesn't have to be monetarily, but in a way that really helps them see all of who they are, who they're not paying attention to when it comes to the impact that they have, and what is it that they could do better, differently, in addition to, in order to really shine. Because I always maintain, don't be the best, be the only. So figure out how you are the only person in somebody's mind or in somebody's world to do this exactly in this way. Because obviously there's only so many things that exist in this world, but there's different approaches to it and different personalities attached to it. So what is it that you are that will skew and change and enhance what it is that you're doing, so that you have a bigger impact and can be all of who you are?
Yeah,
so I think about the removal of something more than the addition of something.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that. Let's go back for just a second. I'm always about origin stories, and you have such an amazing way that you work with your clients. But how did you get into this space, and how did you know that this was your calling and that you were destined to do this? Because you've worked with world leaders, you have worked with some of the largest companies our listeners and our audience would certainly be familiar with. You are in demand continually, and you are you have really built a business that is quite incredible, and continue to grow it during this this craziness of the pandemic, and because you have such a very solid reputation. But how did you start? How did you get into this approach for your business?
By accident. It was,
as all good things are.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, my colleague used to say, Thomas Leonard, opportunities don't knock, they whisper, so shut up and listen.
Yeah.
And this was one of those instances. Yeah, he was right. Opportunities are being thrown at us regularly, but we're so tunnel visioned or so planning our lives that we don't pay attention to them, because that's like over there and it has nothing to do with me. Well, in this case, trauma is what brought me into this field. So it's 38 years. It'll be 39 years this fall that I've been doing this work, which is unbelievable. And my dream, my career was being a musician, and that's what I was doing. I was a musician, a percussionist, believe it or not, where there were no female percussionists back then in the National Arts Centre Orchestra. And that was my lifelong dream and goal, and I achieved being in a world-class orchestra.
Wow.
And my son was born, and he had major medical issues, and I knew that I could not go back to that life. That's not a 9-to-5 job.
Right.
And
right.
I didn't have a lot of my own instruments as well, so I needed to practice at the Art Center. And I knew that I was not able to schedule in his doctor's appointments and everything else, and took a leave of absence thinking that we'll see where it goes. And 6 months in, I gave up my position in the orchestra. Michael had his first surgery when he was 5 months old, and he was an experiment. Again, his surgeon was the only one in the world willing to experiment on the kind of surgery that he needed. And she did. It was a 13-and-a-half-hour operation on a 5-month-old. And then subsequently, he had 18 more surgeries in the first 19 years of his life. So we were in and out of, and she moved. So she moved. She was originally in Montreal. So we traveled to Montreal. Then she moved to Norfolk, Virginia. All his subsequent surgeries were there. We lived at Ronald McDonald House. And when he was about 2, she really loved what she saw and how I was bringing him up. And she said she was about this big, like 4'10" or something, with a personality of a Panzer tank, literally, and said, "You will be working with all my future patients." And I said, "No." And then just before his surgery, she said, "You will be working with all my future patients." He was the first patient she ever had.
Wow.
And excuse the language because I'm going to quote her directly. She points to me and says, "You do not piss off the lady that has a scalpel over your son in an hour." And I just looked at her and I said, "We will talk afterwards," because that meant I had to go back to school.
Yeah.
It was and take care of Michael and take him daily to the hospital for his physio and occupational therapy and doctor's appointments and everything else. It was a lot on my plate. And we had to find doctors that could follow him post-op because she was the only one in the world. And then had moved to Norfolk. So there was a lot of paperwork to get funded because we have universal health care. They funded all of Michael's medical bills, millions and millions of dollars worth. And so I decided, you know what? This will benefit him. Not only me, but it'll benefit him. And I went back to school, and I kept going back to school because they didn't have training in this field in those days. Right. So it was organizational psychology, and then org psych in conjunction with executive coaching. I was part of a pilot program, which I ended up teaching part of it because they were using my model. Yeah. I developed shadow coaching for medical long-term care patients. And I was working with parents of terminally ill cancer kids, and then went into healthcare policy because it was killing me, falling in love with all these little kids who would pass away from cancer. And working with Ronald McDonald houses, so it was Michael was a patient and I was working with other patients. And it just kept evolving. And one day this woman said to me, because she was at the Department of Health, and I was working with her there, and she moved to Foreign Affairs, which is like your Department of State, and calls me in one day saying, "Somebody here needs your coaching, your specific style of coaching. Could you come and meet with him?" And I said, "Sure," not realizing it was the minister. So it was like the Secretary of State that so I met with guards at the front door and escorted up to the wing, where his office is. And I looked at her and said, "I'll kill you later," because she didn't tell me who I was meeting with. And I said to him, "The only way I work with you is if I'm here in real time. Yeah. I will not do this by phone. I need to see. It's so fast paced. It was during the war in Iraq. It was crazy." And so that's where my model really took cement outside of healthcare. And then it kept expanding. I ran a think tank and coaching for organizations. Then I became dean of symposia for them. The head of philanthropy for TED called me and said, "Hey, you're going to work for TED." I said, "Give me a break. Like, I have my practice. I have the think tank."
Like you had all this time on your hands to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, she voluntold me for all kinds of things. Yeah, I've been voluntold for 5 fellowship programs now, which I'm working with. And I love every minute of it. Yeah. I love being part of the TED community. I love being on these back-end calls with potential speakers to screen them, with the TED fellows to help evolve them. This to me is the perfect legacy that I could leave. Yeah. Working with these game changers. So that's the long story short, literally short. Over multiple years, Michael has been my guinea pig. Poor kid. But now he actually calls me for coaching.
That's awesome. I mean, that's proof positive when your kid actually will take your advice and then come back for more.
That's it.
I'm starting to see it with my older kid. My youngest one, not so much, right? Dad, you don't know everything, right? But that's awesome. And oh, go ahead. Sorry, excuse me.
I was going to say, when they were teenagers, his friends would come over and ask me, what to do with their
Wow.
lives. And, could you talk to my mother? All she does is scream at me, and you ask me questions. It's so funny. You're
That's,
making the best use of your time.
yeah.
My mother would scream at me that I'm fooling around. I said, it's your life, not my life. You need to choose how you spend your time. I'm not going to,
Yeah.
scream at you for not studying or whatever. You're going to bear the consequences of that. And that you need to learn that lesson for the rest of your life.
Yep.
And they're bringing up their kids in this way now, which to me is such
Awesome.
a beautiful thing to see. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you definitely have touched so many lives, and in the legacy that you have built, and you just have no idea how many ripples you've created out there in the world. It's amazing to see, and I'm just grateful I get to be considered amongst your friends. So I mean, I am the luckiest guy on the planet. Tell our listeners and our audience that'll see the video what a shadow coach is, because I know I'm going to show your website here in just a second. I also want to talk a little bit about your book, but the shadow coach concept is such an interesting perspective. It sounds like that's what you ended up doing with the minister, right? I mean, essentially insisting to be there face to face and interacting, but with, like you said, with a lot going on, that coaching became, I'm sure, very pivotal at that point for them.
So shadow coaching is twofold. And I want to be very clear about this. It's more than just observational coaching, which is performance coaching is observational coaching. There's a lot of observational coaching. I want to see shadow as it emerges. Doesn't matter how successful a person is. You're going to have a dark side, a side of you that you want to shove away in a closet and not want anybody to see. You're going to have fears and insecurities. Actually, the higher up you get, the more the imposter syndrome clicks in. Why should anybody listen to me? Who am I, for that, or to be in this role? And especially if they're an elected official, they're not going to share that with the world.
Yeah.
I need to see the language they use, how they interact with people, what their triggers are, what enrages them, what engages them. The only way to see all that is in real time when I'm observing them through their days, through every situation imaginable. Challenge them on some of their responses. Ask them what was really going on there. We have some code that I could actually work with them. I'm not going to say it publicly
Yeah.
in case anybody I know is listening,
Yep.
because I don't want them to figure it out. But we have code language that I use to help people reflect back and become reflective practitioners to really see when, the ugly side of their psyche comes to play. But okay, the caveat is in shadow, which is the Carl Jung archetype of shadow. It's everything from your deepest, darkest side that you're very uncomfortable with to your hidden potential and that which you have not yet discovered. So I am there to literally shine a light on what's dark so it's no longer dark, and have them accept what their shadows are and to actually see where they've shone so they could do it again and again. So I'm there it's almost like a video recorder with deep shadow. So I tell people it's the difference between having an X-ray and an MRI, multiple layers. The executives I work with, some of them at the beginning, they go, you're not coming to board meetings and stuff like that with me. And my answer is, we'll talk about that another time. Let's get our feet wet in your everyday. After a day, I'm telling you, like a day max.
They're like,
you're
Donna,
coming everywhere with me. It's not that I need you. It's that I cannot believe how much you picked up.
Yeah.
And that is the cool part. I cannot believe that you saw this. And I never saw that in myself. So what we do is exponentially grow somebody in real time where they can implement some of the tools that I share with them as we go. So it's not report out what happened and then try to deal with it later.
Yeah.
Because most of the time it blows up totally out of proportion. It's let's deal with it now. I'm documenting everything so that I could literally share with them specific whole situations, relive them so that they're so self-aware that they will not act in the same way again.
Yeah.
I do that for military, for first responders, for security and intelligence, for political leaders, heads of companies, executives. It doesn't matter. what I do, and full teams. That's where I have the most fun, is working
Yeah.
with full teams, seeing the interactions and all the interplay and whatever else. Sit there with a grin on my face and they just shake their head because they're used to having me around.
Yep. That's awesome.
So yeah, that's the shadow coaching. It's not only the only style that I use. Obviously, it's when it's applicable. There is an element of shadow even when we have a discussion through video conferencing. Listening to the language that's used, not fast enough, not good enough. Okay, what is enough?
Mm-hmm.
Describe to me enough. Until you define enough, nothing could be enough because you don't have any kind of target. So let's look at what is enough, what isn't enough, and are you ever going to cut yourself some slack? We go into the nitty gritty of the language, and it's exponentially faster than traditional coaching models, and we go at the pace of the client's world, so we never take them out of where they work.
Yeah.
I'm there with them normally when there's no pandemic through their days so that we do things in real time as much as possible and around the edges. So they just fly.
That's amazing.
It's super cool. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but it was 2016 and I had, as you know, in addition to what I do with the Ripple Effect, I own, a couple of software companies, and one of the companies at the time, I had one of the founding partners was in the process of wanting to leave, and the opportunity for me was to buy him out and assume the large control of the company. And I remember, you said, let's get on a call right away. Let's have it. And I said, well, I'll call you. And you're like, nope, we have to do it over video because, we need to have this conversation face to face as much as we could. And you were so gracious. I remember I was sitting in my game room at the time and at home trying to figure out whether I should do this or not. And we get this call set up and you start asking me these questions and you start pulling, things out of me that I never expected that I was going to ever share. Challenges, the issues, the concerns, a lot of the confidence factors that I was really struggling with at the time. And I don't know if it's really crazy, but I just had two vultures show up outside my window. I believe they're my competition. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what that means, but that means something. Wow, and he's just looking at me through the window. It's really weird. Anyway, we go through this great session, and you're talking to me, and you said not only are you going to be able to successfully buy this individual out and negotiate the deal you want, not the one that's on the table, but the one that you want, but you're ultimately one day going to be the complete control and own the company outright. And so for those, folks that aren't familiar with, some of these things that I do, the software company I have has a minority partner that's been involved since that period of time. And Donna saw it way back when that this was the ultimate destiny for me. And I don't know if you have that ability to look into the future and see it, but I think you do. You have some serious ripple power. But just literally 3 weeks ago, I bought out that partner and I'm in 100% control of the company. And you and I had another conversation about that, about why it's an alignment, why the deal was going to happen and what I needed to do. But your ability to break things down and uncover the things that are holding somebody back is really unbelievable. And it's so enlightening and like you're giving a client like myself the ability to take that big monkey that's on their back and just set it on its own and say, go find somebody else. Because I have my purpose. I know what I need to do. And I remember telling Kathy, my wife, that, at the time in 2016, I walked down and I said, Donna says I can do it. And she said, well, if Donna says you can do it, then you can do it. And I was scared, and concerned that, maybe at some, various junctures that I had made the wrong decision. You're like, this is everything that you need and should be doing with yourself. And you get to be able to tie that into the Ripple and the approach that you take. And that's why you're going to grow it. This guy didn't see the vision that you have for this company, and you do. And now you just need to accelerate your progress, and this should help you. And so hugely, hugely valuable for me at the time. And the company has grown. I mean, we are now we're, completely in control. We're, able to do things that we couldn't have done with our other entanglements. But all the way back in 2016, you saw that I would end up owning the whole company, because I think you could get to the core so easily with me about what was holding me back. But what I saw at that time, probably the vision that I was probably still struggling to really communicate, but you knew it was in there and you helped me pull it out. So you are tremendous. So I owe you a debt of gratitude for that as well.
That was my pleasure, because, fundamentally, Steve, the bottom line is you are such a decent human being. No, I'm saying this for a reason, okay? You are not out to get anybody. You always look for a win-win situation. And for the other person not to have a vision meant that the company would continue to struggle and nobody would be happy.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. What you did was, in a way, enable everybody to come out with a resolution where they could be happier.
Yeah.
And when you focus on that, and it's not a win-lose, it's a sense of relief for somebody who is always struggling to see a vision in something, try to fix something when they don't know what the desired end result really is, or what it could be. And you didn't struggle with that. So, that was one of the things that really stood out for me, is that things deserve to be in certain people's containers or under certain people's watches.
Yeah. And
this was the case when it came to you.
Well, I appreciate that very much. You definitely buoyed my confidence. And, sometimes I was like, I'm not sure I made the right decision, but 3 weeks ago, I definitely knew I had, and we're continuing to, see where we can go with it. And the product has become one of the industry's best known software. I mean, our sales and revenue don't necessarily equate to that yet, but as far as our brand and our efforts that we've put behind it, seeing that come to, fruition, you gave me the confidence to take that out of the dark and put some light on it and make it happen. So I really appreciate that. Really quickly, I just, want to show everybody, I'm going to flip here just for a second over to your website. And you have a phenomenal website that it's a betterperspective.com. And that's what you provide, right? I mean, that's you. I mean, the domain could not be any more perfect for you, because that's exactly what you do. But it's, for those of you that will see this video later, there's just some great things on your website that become really, really valuable questions to ask yourself, why a coaching relationship might make sense. I love this aspect about Be Remarkable, because it really speaks to people. But, unlike a lot of folks out there, Donna, that are in the coaching profession and that, work with individuals that are trying to find that next level of achievement, either, through their career path or for their own personal, their own personal achievement goals, that they want to make changes and do something significant. You make it real simple for people to engage and figure out how to come, in alignment with what you're doing and why a relationship with you could make sense. I see why people seek you out all over the world, because the information that you have in here is just tremendous.
Thank you so much. We developed an institute. I can't even remember how far back. The Better Perspective was founded in 1999. And that was literally the coaching psychology, the hands-on practice, work that I was doing. And then we decided to go bigger. So we decided to create the No Ceiling Just Sky Institute, which A Better Perspective is under, and that's noceilingJustSkyInstitute.com. And what is in there is our incubatory, which is the accelerator for people, ideas, and organizations, where we run our Emergent Leaders program to literally take some of the stuff we do at TED and grow leaders from within, which is the most fun but powerful thing that I could do in an organization. So they don't look at outside. It speaks to innovation and letting the youngins bring innovation to the table, present it, connect with senior leaders, and really have a voice, where in especially huge corporations, they don't usually have a voice. It's coaching psychology, it's psychometric assessments, it's all kinds of stuff to grow everything from an innate object, which is not really innate because it's an organization which is filled with people. And I always say, we are human beings, but we're human becomings.
Yeah.
We're continuously becoming more, different, morphing. And what could we do to really have a fulfilled life? Well, that means to align ourselves properly with everything that we know we can do, and even some of the stuff that we don't know we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you do a tremendous job in every aspect. That I guess I wasn't even aware that you were, working with this other organization to provide that level. I mean, that's kind of next level, thinking in terms of what you offer and the approach that you take, which is great. Tell everybody a little bit, just real quickly, if you don't mind, about the book, because I think the book is.
Okay.
Let me make sure I get this on screen correctly. Oh, I just am about to launch something. So, whoops. I just launched a software I did not mean to. So,
no worries. Leaders, their stories, their words, conversations with
yes.
human-based leaders. So it's like, out of many different conversations, we chose a smaller group to really showcase conversations with amazing leaders, everyone from U.S. Secret Service to journalism to politics to working with homeless kids, just amazing people in their own rights, and what they're doing to totally impact the world, their leadership styles, and my reflections and the learning and some of my own experiences that tie in with these people. That was a labor of love. No ifs, ands, or buts. I'm actually working on another book right now on, questions to live by. It's like some of the questions I shared with you at the front end of our conversation, so that people have a handbook of sorts to really have these reality check questions to ask themselves through making decisions, through living their lives, to really give that 360 view and opportunity for that view to the individual, not the coach with the individual. So I'm working on that now. Hopefully it'll be out by the end of the year. Stay tuned, because I'm going to tap into you for the book as well. So I'm very excited about this. Again, this is my way of saying we need to live in the questions. Yeah. And what are the questions that we need to live in? And when do we ask them? And what do we do with the answers?
I love that. Well, you know that I'm all about the questions. So I figured a perfect way to finish this up might be a few Ripple connection questions. Are you game?
Absolutely.
Okay. So obviously I have my Ripple connection cards at the ready because there are a few. So I'm going to pick a random one. I mean, this one is actually kind of intriguing for me, I think, because I'm anxious to hear what you'd say. But what is the best thing you could hear a colleague or a client say about you?
Say about me? I'll tell you what a client recently said about me. You absolutely know who you are.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh, that's so great. That
floored me. And she said to me, and I want to be in that place as well, where I absolutely know who I am.
Oh, that's great. Well, and I can actually see why they see that in you. I mean, it's you to the nth degree. What is here's another one. What is one thing you wish you had tried before now?
Oh, wow. Before now. So, like, do you mean another career or
anything? I mean, could be a hobby, could be a career, could be, maybe it's skydiving.
That ain't happening ever.
I could see you in one of those bird suits that go like 300 miles an hour. They jump off the cliff.
Here if comes I do Donna. That in my life, what do I need a suit for that? Yeah,
that's exactly. Ray would confirm that, right?
Jumping into the deep end of every day, I absolutely do that.
Yep.
There's no hobby that I would want to try that I haven't tried. Seriously, I have a ton of hobbies.
What's your
It
most
might be
favorite
a
hobby
different.
then? What's your most favorite hobby since you just mentioned it?
I don't have favorites. Like
Okay.
I'm a trained chef, so I love to cook, and I've been cooking more since the
Wow.
pandemic. I did that for my sanity when Michael was in and out of surgeries. I trained with chefs, and I love that. And I paint porcelain. That's another
I
hobby that really relaxes me. So those two I love. If there's a hobby that I want to try, I just do it.
I
Um,
love it.
I think it's more. I might have gone into something where I had more direct impact day to day on people. So medicine wouldn't be psychology because I have that impact now. Although I'm not a clinical psychologist,
Hmm.
it's organizational psychology that I do. But it's I something in medicine, maybe physiotherapy or something, because they just made such a huge difference in my son's life.
Yeah.
His physios. So, really teach people how to live their best life when they don't have everything working 100%, So maybe something like that, but I have absolutely no regrets.
That's awesome. Well, so let me ask you one last question. What does the ripple mean to you?
Ripple effect means that everything you do, everything you say has impact. And it's up to you to choose whether it's positive or negative.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, you have, without question, had amazing, amazing impact on my life. And I am so grateful that you sent me that email way back when and agreed to, to take me under your wing and allow us to just be friends because you're just incredible on every level. And you have been just such a huge, huge, light to my life. I'm honored by our friendship. I'm honored that I can send you an email in the middle of the night and you'll be willing to set up a call like early the next morning. And you always give me insight and perspective that a better perspective to plug your website.
Yeah.
Almost always every time we interact, you challenge my way of thinking or my situation that I might be facing, and you do it in a way that is just it's so refreshing and so great. Your talents are yeah, it's legendary. I mean, you are just amazing at what you do.
Thank you. You are a gift in my life. That's no ifs, ands, or buts.
Well,
So
thank you.
just, let's keep interacting and pushing each other's buttons, and it'll be perfect.
Absolutely. I mean, how else are you going to be in an elevator at some point, get an email, and people think it's from the former minister now.
That's right. And no end of grief in my world, that's for
Oh no,
sure.
I always give you grief over that. Yeah, so just
Yes.
you did suggest I change my name at one point, but I'm like, I have that. That's my name. He should change his
No,
name.
I didn't want you to change your name. I wanted you to become our prime minister.
I'm open.
You're open.
As soon as I sell this other the software company out for millions and millions of dollars, I will have nothing to do. So I will come and you can help me form a government.
Okay, there you go. We're on.
Well, Donna, how do people, so a betterperspective.com, but how else would you like people to find you and engage with you? And I know you have a number of social platforms that you participate on, but I didn't want to make any assumptions. So, do you have any that you'd like people to follow you or look for you on?
LinkedIn is the one that I'm most active on, so they
Okay.
could find me under my name. And the other one I'm on is Instagram. I'm sort of just testing the waters there, so they could find me under Donna Karlin on Instagram, Karlin with a K. If they do it with a
Yep.
C, they won't find. And just through my website, there's a contact form. If they want to reach out to me, they could do that through my website. So any of those ways, you'll
Fantastic.
be able to get me. Yeah.
Well, and you are a gift. I am so hopeful that if you are listening to this as the podcast, or you are checking this out on the broadcast on YouTube, you definitely go seek Donna out. I think you will be amazed at what she might bring to your life or to your work or to your team. I highly encourage you to learn more about her and what she brings to the table, because she is the epitome of a Rippler in so many ways, and you won't be disappointed, I promise you. Donna, thank you for joining the Ripple Effect podcast. I am so grateful you said yes to do this.
Anytime. It
All
was a
right.
pleasure
We'll
and
do it
an honor.
again. We will definitely do this again, because we have more to talk about.
Okay, you're on.
All right. Take care. And as always, Ripple on.